All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our session on Growing Up Comp, advocating for the next generation of industry professionals.
Hey everyone, yeah, we are truly humbled to be with you here today, and we hope that our stories and our strategies benefit both new and existing professionals in the workers' comp space.
We are super excited to have the opportunity to speak with you today about a topic Magnum and I are both passionate about. As former recipients of the IAIABC's Next Generation Award, recognizing us as young leaders in the work comp industry, we both understand the importance of our roles in advancing this industry and the commitment needed to nourish the career paths of our future leaders. A little bit of background about myself, as I'm always curious to know how others landed in work comp. I got my start in the industry by chance and certainly not something I planned for, as after college, I immediately went into the hospitality industry. Working for the Ritz Carlton, I realized night, weekend, and holiday work was not for me and maneuvered into commercial real estate. But when the market crashed in 2008, my company at the time went bankrupt and I was left without a job. That's when I took a chance on an adjusting position I was offered at a large TPA and proceeded to take on the most challenging role of my life as an adjuster, working the front lines for the largest retailer in the world. That job was the most stressful role I've held in my professional career, but it taught me a tremendous amount about hard work and absolutely was a blessing in disguise as it led me to my current role as Director of Product Management at Healthy Systems, a company I have passionately worked for over the last 9 years, doing my best to affect real change in the industry for our clients and ultimately improve the experience for the injured workers. Now, let's meet Magnum.
Thanks, Steph. And even though our paths are incredibly similar now, they started off in two ends of the spectrum. My first job was a business I started selling exotic chicken eggs for hatching online in my early teens, followed by a very short stint working at a dress barn in Osage Beach, Missouri, where a district manager from O'Reilly Auto Parts, he hired me on the spot because he said he liked the way that I sold dresses. And that's his words, not mine. So from 15 until my mid 20s, I stayed with that company, working at a store, then up to corporate for technical help support, and then onto the management, overseeing a large technical conversion for the independent side of the company. In 2016, I left that company and officially started my first job in the workers' comp space as Director of Information Systems for Comp Alliance, which is now owned by Enlight. My initial objective for the company involved the implementation of data science, reporting, and platforms, along with the conversion from the existing software Strata to the new Mitchell Smart Advisor system. After the implementation of these systems and processes, I was promoted to the Senior Vice President of IT before leaving the company earlier this year to pursue freelance CTO opportunities in the healthcare space. My current role is the Chief Technology Officer for CompDME and CompPBM, where we are in the process of implementing several new systems to support company growth. So, Stephanie, we just talked about our background a little bit, and this whole thing is around leaders in our industry. So what do you look for in future leaders in the space?
Jen. Let's start by taking a look at the anatomy of our future leaders, focusing on a valuable group of candidates working as claims adjusters across our industry. Just as my career path grew from a claims adjuster role, many of the stakeholders I work with throughout the industry also tell me they got their start in a frontline role. Looking at growing our future leaders, this is a great place to focus our attention. While claims adjusting may be a highly sought after role coming out of college, there are a lot of advantages for new professionals just getting their start if they consider this career path. That's because this is a smaller industry, and once you're in and start gaining a unique expertise in a very specific sector of healthcare and insurance, the value of that knowledge becomes something that can be leveraged to do many different things to rapidly grow careers within our space. Claims adjusters make great future leaders as they gain a keen empathy from the day to day frontline experience, which gives them an intimate understanding of the claims process, which is an attribute that can fuel the understanding needed to solve the problems and challenges our industry faces. Looking at the skills gained as an adjuster, it's important for leadership to recognize the value of this, promote career paths from the adjusting role forward, and nurture the professional growth of our potential future leaders. However, not all future leaders get their start as an adjuster. Magnum, how did you become CTO at such a young age?
Yeah, Stephanie, I would say much like I have a passion for developing people and processes, which was fortunately noticed early on by others. Also, to be honest, I was a programmer, and I think they wanted me to stop breaking production code. So it was easier to change my job rather fire me because I was really bad at programming. But all jokes aside, I had several struggles along the way, being early in that management role. So prior to getting into the workers' comp space, I was already experienced and educated on modern day technology frameworks. Stepping into this space was difficult at first, as we had several antiquated processes that were critical for business functionality, but they were either ineffective or they needed enhancements done, which, as you know, there's multiple layers in these antiquated processes, and even the most minor adjustment can break several things downstream. So we had to plan accordingly the priority of these projects as it related to the company's mission to implement an entirely new framework by the end of the year. As you can imagine, as a young executive in a brand new space, relationships were key not only laterally with other department heads, but also vertically with the team members on the technology group. Fortunately, I did a really horrible job in a very similar scenario in my early 20s with my previous employer. And so I was able to take the nuggets learned and apply them in this situation, which netted us a much better results. One of my favorite sayings is until you change your thinking, you will always recycle your experiences. And in order to effectively manage any individual, both experienced and non-experienced, you're going to have to be in a constant state of ensuring your team is engaged with the work, which I did not understand in my early 20s as a leader at all. I don't mean to say production was everything or is everything. What I mean to convey here is good, engaged work makes people truly happy. In this example of my own failure, I failed to realize that every time I made a comment on how things should be done in a group setting, I was effectively forcing others to use my answer, even if it wasn't the best one. Furthermore, I had a ton of experience in the room, just a massive amount of experience in technology and in the business space. However, I was effectively sacrificing all of that for the sake of my own ego, being the guy with the solution and not being the leader I needed to be. I say all this to convey that management is different than ownership. If you want to be a leader in this space, or frankly in any space at a young age, you need to spend time understanding your high level responsibilities and really need to stay out of doing your team's work for them. And Stephanie, you and I are both kind of in the same area now, different backgrounds. But how was your experience getting into this level in this space as a leader?
It's interesting. Often I get asked how I broke into the product management world. Product management is a very hot career path right now, and I do not see that slowing down anytime soon. However, with it being such a highly sought after career that typically requires job specific professional experience or industry specific experience, it's not the easiest job to land. This is one of the benefits I found of starting a career in a frontline role in order to grow to my future role, which would have been a much harder thing to break into had I not been in this industry. However, my career path was not clear to me at the time I ended my job as an adjuster a couple years into that role to explore other options. I briefly left work comp before finding my way back and landing on my current career path with Healthy Systems. Being an adjuster really allowed me to gain a unique perspective of industry challenges. It was very apparent to me that there were antiquated systems, like you mentioned, Magnum, and ways of accessing information that were causing inefficient use of my time, that I felt was much more valuable working one on one with the injured worker, employer, medical, and legal stakeholders to really move the claim along and get the injured worker back to health and back to work. Adjusting claims was an extremely influential role in my career. That has allowed me to be successful at what I do, and I gain credibility with my multitude of stakeholders I work with to better understand how we can still solve the day to day and even bigger industry challenges and problems. My passion was fueled by the drive to want to help people and injured workers who are in need of support, guidance, and empathy, as their situation is not one that any of us ever want to find ourselves in. Workers' comp is a purpose driven, people centric industry, and that is a highly attractive path that we can leverage to gain future talent into our industry, and just as important, maintain that talent in our industry. So, how do we do that? Gain and maintain talent. Let's look at a day in the life of an adjuster to understand the challenges they face and how we can help address those and grow the skills and talent gained in the role to be something more. So, at the time I became an adjuster, I didn't know what I was signing up for. I studied for my license, went through boot camp style training, and had a great mentor that helped guide me as I took on those first few claims. As my caseload grew and as more and more complexities piled on, I didn't know if the significant time, dedication, and sometimes tears were worth it. Was there a light at the end of the tunnel? There was, but at the time I couldn't see it. So I would say it's important that adjusters getting their start in our industry have potential career paths visible. The role is hard, but it can be very rewarding, knowing you are helping people through what can be their darkest hour. And it's important that our new talent can see the path forward. We also need to consider the unique challenges this role presents, as well as a multitude of stressors that makes this role so hard. Adjusters often balance a large caseload, which is typically over 100 claims. And while adjusters may get high level medical terminology and situational training, it's hard to prepare someone for the critical decisions they will be making on their claims day in and day out. And most importantly, how that impacts the injured worker's life and potentially the lives of their families as well. This isn't a nine to five job that you clock in and out of. Rather, I remember nights thinking about my injured workers and worrying about if I did everything I needed to do that day to make sure my injured workers got the care authorized, scheduled, and coordinated, and all their proper payments issued. As an adjuster, you are an employee of an insurance company trying your best to be a great steward of finance and making the best compensability decisions, but you are also an important advocate for the injured worker. You are balancing all kinds of stakeholders, not only to support the medical needs of the injured worker, but are also in charge of doing the right thing for the employer and advocating for the injured worker's work life, as well as potentially working with attorneys, investigators, and potential legal on some of your claims. This job is not for the faint of heart. In addition to being the captain of each claim, adjusters are often working in age systems or systems that can be frustratingly inefficient. They are often working in multiple disparate systems to handle their claim and referral needs, adding to the stress of it all. When we are looking at the next generation, we need to consider what to attract. Magnum, from your perspective, how can we do this?
Yeah, Stephanie, and thank you for that. And it's crazy to me coming into this space how much an adjuster actually has to take on, and understanding really all those different paths we expect out of them now. It's a lot to take on. So, at a minimum, as a guy who's in the technology side of the business, we've got to do our best to assist these folks and to make life, as easy as possible, while still like resetting passwords constantly, which is something, we love doing in technology. But really, the paths to attract and maintain, they seldom look the same, but usually we find some commonality in what works. Previously I mentioned coming into an environment with antiquated applications, which was my directive to handle and to update and to inevitably replace those systems. Our existing staff did a fantastic job on the old platform. Really the problem was the limitations of the existing technology. Whereas keeping this in place would please existing team members because of the lack of change, generally did the opposite on attracting new talent, as most applicants either had little to no experience on that platform, or the training that we provided, because it was so up in everyone's head and so ingrained in the process, was very difficult for new hires to grasp. So this really leads us to solving two issues that you mentioned: attracting new team members while maintaining the existing talent. The only way we could be effective in supporting what the company needed was to define stakeholders who defined requirements and subject expert matters and work collectively on the metrics and KPIs we're used to move forward, which Stephanie, I know you are intimately familiar with on your end and product side. How many times in your life, one thing I always like to think about with applications is, how many times am I online, I'm shopping somewhere other than Amazon. Some of us love it, some of us hate it. But we all end up shopping there because it's so easy. Well, how many times have we abandoned a cart because we just said, "No, this is just way too clunky"? Really, that is the standard that applications of today, regardless of if they're internal or external, are critiqued against. Really, but the only difference in that is I can abandon a cart in that scenario. If I work for a company, it may be my only option, so I am forced to use it. So that really leaves us with two options. We either spend an appropriate amount of time understanding the end user and the business expectations to develop a product that meets as many objects as possible or objectives as possible, or we force a substandard solution on our team with no input, which may objectively get us where we want to be, but will cause issues long term with the happiness of our team members. And and unfortunately, that happens quite a bit on the technology side when we don't get engaged with business stakeholders across the board. I'd also like to point out in that statement, I said meets as many objectives as possible and not all objectives. This stems back to the first statement on defining stakeholders and KPIs. We cannot make a decision to go or not go if we have no metrics to validate what is acceptable. In instances where these lack, it's generally the loudest person in the room who has the final say, which may or may not be the ideal call maker for the given objective. And I know we've all seen that from time to time, and it's just not an ideal situation for the development of these processes and applications. So defining what we need up front, an example for us as a KPI is we had a certain bill turnaround time that we had to abide by. Now that can be adjusted either operationally through manpower or through some workflows, or we can do it on the back end through things such as like auto adjudication. But either way, that's going to move the needle on that KPI. And knowing what that metric was for us gave us kind of a threshold to do the sign off and move on without stalling on ill-defined requirements. If you're coming into this environment, whether it's on the technology team or not, a huge leg up would be had by becoming workflow driven. Effective and streamlined workflows are a product of proper technology, but more importantly, a solid understanding of the business unit the flow is working within. Workflows will make or break an organization or workers' comp these days because the margins are tightening up and the availabilities of the workforce becomes more sparse. If you are new to the industry, I highly suggest evaluating your current processes and workflows really as often as you can on a daily basis, if possible, and viewing the process outside of the current situation and constructs to see if it can be optimized. One thing that Stephanie and I have in common, along with several others of that IABC class, was a lot of workflow-driven folks. They had some very good optimization that allowed their organization to grow because of them being there and identifying those issues and resolving them. So if you come up with those items on your team, get with your manager or the technology team to work towards a solution that can improve processes within your company. Lastly, but it's not the least important, is delivering what is needed and when it is needed, and nothing more. Working in the data field for some time now, I can tell you that asking or giving too much information to an end user generally nets in a loss of quality or integrity. As a use case example for myself, we offered a triage hotline or a triage service to our clients. The priority of that exchange was getting an injured worker either off to a clinic or cared for within only a few minutes. In either case, the information being asked by our front-end users needed to be very specific in nature and only what was necessary. If we started asking questions outside of what was needed, we would see instances of incorrectly identified cases due to the injured workers just going along with default answers, much like getting bored with a test and just selecting C for the remaining 20. We needed to try to avoid that. So we really needed to work closely with operations to understand what is critical, what would be nice, and really what is not needed at all. And Stephanie, that really all boils down to research, which I know is like a big level of expertise for you. You live in that stuff. So whenever you're looking at patterns and research to make a successful product, what do you look for those products?
Yeah, it's really critical to my role as a product manager to be teamed with my user research team. It's really all about ensuring that we are incorporating the user's voice into what we are designing and building. We don't want to guess at what our users of the industry need. We want to research, analyze, and validate that we clearly understand the problem, and just as important, are designing the right thing to address the need. On the screen, you'll see key findings from several research studies performed with claims adjusters and nurse case managers that we use to help fuel our designs. It's these types of insights that allow us to ensure we are focused on the right things, building useful tools, and doing our policies and reduce stressors for the dedicated employees working on the front lines. It's these employees that are keeping the work comp world go round, some of whom might be our next future leaders. And we want to make sure we're doing everything in our power to make their jobs successful and rewarding to hopefully maintain that talent in our industry for years to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and really 4 great bullet points there, Steph. So today we discussed quite a bit as it relates to career paths and technology and leadership for folks coming into the industry or already in the industry looking to advance. Unfortunately, our industry was formed due to a bad situation occurring. Good people who are actively pursuing careers, providing for others, or both are now in an injured state. I am certain that our industry provides a light at the end of the tunnel for these folks. And I'm certain that within the group watching now and those out in our space are providing an excellent level of service for everyone. And we have much more to come in the workers' comp space. Even though I'm a big technology guy and we've talked a lot about that, I'd like to leave you with a really great quote from Cheryl Strayed, and that is, compassion isn't about solutions. It's about giving all the love that you've got. And with that, I think we'll open up for questions if anyone has any. No one was blinded by like my bald head and the light ricocheting off of it during this presentation. Anything at all?
We just got a halo effect going. I don't see anything in the Q&A section, so if there are no questions, we'll go ahead and close it out.
Yeah. Thank you, Steph, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time.